Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. We're ready. Okay. Good morning. I'm Councillor Boyd Elliott, the Chairman of the Committee, and I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Overview Committee that is being broadcast live and recorded for publication. Okay, we'll go to agenda item 1 and ask the committee to approve the minutes of the last meeting. We'll take a vote with a show of hands. All in favour? I wasn't here, so I can't. That's fine. Okay. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. So we've got apologies from Councillor Glyn Guilfoyle for other reasons, and Councillor Mike Pringle is here substituting for him today. And apologies from Councillor Dave Shaw, also for other reasons, and Councillor John Wilmot is substituting for him today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Just, I spoke with Glyn yesterday and just want to, from the committee, for me, if that's okay, send him my best. Yeah, I had a good conversation with Esther, got a lot of time for his lovely chat, but just hoping his wife are okay. So, okay. Agenda item 3 is the declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand now if you have an interest to declare. If you have an interest to declare, you should state what type of interest it is and give brief details. Anyone? No? Okay. What's going well? Agenda item 4 is the review of the Recommissioning of Nottinghamshire Healthy Families Programme, and it's the establishment of a joint scrutiny working group. Let's meet to introduce the report as in the bundle and to move the recommendations as detailed in the report and ask for a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Smith. Does anyone have any questions on the report? Okay, we should take it in order. Councillor Fogg.
Sorry, thank you very much. Okay, yes, thank you for this report. We've got a number of concerns. Certainly in item 2, we see that the membership is down as chair of all the significant committees, which is understandable, but plus one other member from each committee. We'd like to know how that is being decided. Clearly, there needs to be some proportionality in terms of political representation, doesn't there? I think as well, in terms of 3, or to some extent 4, but certainly in terms of 3, in terms of the scope, we've got 1 or 2 concerns around the scope. First, I'm not sure who wrote this, but we certainly haven't fed into it. And particularly some of our concerns that have been raised time and time again and have not been minuted, and to be honest with you, particularly well publicly acknowledged. We're still very concerned about the health visitor provider and the fact that they did not make face-to-face meetings and didn't tell us. So, and that is frustratingly missing from any of anything that's kind of been written or acknowledged. And we would like to be absolutely sure, for example, that in the scope, that direct question is asked. So I think it's really important that actually we get a bit of a wider discussion about actually what goes in the scope. And it's really not in there. And I think that probably is something, if you're going to set up a working party, why not give the working party the opportunity to feed into the scope? Because that will hopefully, presumably will be cross-party. Because I think that is kind of one of the so in terms of key questions on page 12, what performance managing and monitoring process will be in place? Again, I think we need to make reference to some of the stuff that was raised in the call-in, particularly around face-to-face meetings and health visitors, to keep our children safe. This for us was a significant safeguarding issue, which again was batted back to us kind of several times. But if we don't scrutinise these things properly and in public and robustly, our children will not be safe, and that's something that none of us want, do we? None of us want. So that is one other thing. Sorry, page 13 at the top, that top box. How would existing safeguarding procedures be built into the service delivery model? Fine, but given what happened in terms of the health visitors programme, and given what happened as a result of that in terms of no face-to-face meetings, we're just wondering if that service delivery model is fit for purpose. So just using that as a kind of the sole criteria for safeguarding, we think is unsafe.
Hopefully this will cover it. Firstly, on the membership of the committee, it's been written like that to ensure proportionality, because the initial thought was to say chairs and vice chairs, but obviously the Labour group hasn't got any vice chairs on those committees, so that's why it was agreed the chairs plus one other, and obviously the discussions will happen within each chair amongst themselves who to nominate, but there will be representation from across the political groups for that one. Now, the review is actually coming from the request from Cabinet, and the request from Cabinet was to look at the recommissioning of the process, not to look at the performance of the previous programme, and that's why the scope doesn't include those issues which have been talked about which were talked about quite in depth in health scrutiny, which I think that when it was discussed, I think in the March meeting. If you have got concerns, you can raise those directly with the officers about the current one. But the request from Cabinet, when this went to Cabinet in April and Cabinet again in June, was that the review actually looks at the recommissioning process and what the new programme should look like, not to be looking back at what the old programme did or did not deliver.
I'm asking you to make absolutely sure that the next recommissioning is robust and keeps our children safe. That's what I'm asking.
I think again it was noted in that health scrutiny meeting that the safeguarding issues, the safeguarding procedures are robust at the council, and that everyone, all staff, all members know how to feed into those if they have got any concerns. So it is going to be addressed. When I met with the officers to discuss the scope and how we were going to formulate the working of the review, I was very keen that the safeguarding issue was what was covered and that was included. So when you carry out the review, you can get that assurance that the safeguarding procedures and how it links into the Healthy Families Programme will be covered and is fit for purpose.
So when we do start the scope and we've got the working party organised, we'll raise that concern as well. Yeah, address it. Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, just going on to that bit as well about the actual work. Well, that is that it's actually going to be balanced. Well, going back to one simple question as well on the methodology. Get the word right. Methodology, for instance. The direct with senior public health and commissioning manager and the consultant. Now it does say initially. So will they be able to use other methodologies? Will they actually be able to expand? And when it comes down to the safeguarding being robust, this is the concern we have. It was robust when we weren't getting face-to-face visits. And we really do need to make sure that somewhere in here it's either referenced that it's a requirement. And obviously, hopefully it'll be a reference in the contract when it finally goes out because we're reviewing. But it needs to be there that it is essential that face-to-face visits are actually there and not by phone, not by email, and not by whatever other method talking to a friend next door. So that's one of the reasons we called it in as well, if you remember, because the actual concern with face-to-face meetings. So we want to be seen to be fair. We want to be seen to be looking at it and looking at how the new contract's going to fit. But we don't want to be seen to be washing our own laundry and saying, yeah, that's fine, it's nice and clean now, when it isn't. So we just want to make sure that everything's right. We're going into it open-minded, but we don't want to be actually guided down a road where we can't turn from. So it's as simple as that. It's the right thing to have to review. We called it in for the right reasons. But specifically on the methodology, will they be allowed to expand? Because I don't want to go into any review with blinkers on.
Yeah, I met with the officers last week about how we're actually going to run and how the meeting is actually going to work, and I was very keen that you are provided with all the written information. So obviously you will get presented with information in the meetings with the opportunity to discuss it, but there's an awful lot of background information that I requested that will be circulated to members of the review group, both during and before the thing, so you've got the chance to read it and make sure it covers everything you wanted it. So you've got the information that you feel the need, that you feel able to make the judgment on how the new programme should look.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this will get discussed in the next item as well, but the role of Cabinet with regards to overview and scrutiny isn't healthy. surely it's up to a scrutiny, an overview committee to actually scope an item, and not for it to be scoped beforehand on the instructions of cabinet. I find that a very, very curious a way round of doing things. And I know that I sat in on the calling hearing, and I am acutely aware of not only my group's concerns, but also the Labour group's concern about the standard of early childhood health visiting, particularly in the county. To actually look at this subject without looking at that just doesn't make sense to me. And at the end of the day, yeah, I'm all in favour of setting up this working group to look at this, but we need to be able to have the freedom to discuss what we want with regards to this issue, and not have it scoped for us at the instruction of cabinet. That's not how scrutiny works. Cabinet should be completely devolved from the overview and scrutiny process, and it isn't in its authority, and that just isn't healthy.
There's a couple of things here. The health visiting is obviously really important, but the health visiting have obviously been talked about an awful lot. But I'm sure when you speak to the officers, the Healthy Families Programme covers many more things than that. It is a really important thing, but it covers a lot more things than that. So that's why the scope's been designed as it was. With the independence of scrutiny, yes, scrutiny is independent. However, in this specific example, Cabinet have asked, with relation to calling, that the members look at this part of it to guide them. If in future, that if scrutiny wanted to look at how the programme was performing, various issues of it, that would be totally different from, that would be totally separate from cabinet, and they wouldn't be there'd be no involvement. And also in this scope, it was just a request that it looks into the recommissioning. The actual delivery, the actual formulation of the scope was discussed with myself and the public health officers. So there's been no involvement by cabinet other than saying, as it said in the April and June cabinet meetings, what should be looked at, i.e., what the programme should look like in the future.
Also, and the health checks as well. The health checks we're on about are going to be discussed on the 11th September in the health select committee. So that's coming to that meeting as well.
Right.
Okay.
So we've got it's a mess, isn't it? Thank you, Chairman. Not to repeat anything that anybody said or shake my head like some of the members are doing. The report, sorry, Martin, the report's not clear on the structure and balance of the working group, and I think we'll all agree that when the calling was put forward, it was put forward for genuine reasons. It followed all the procedures, and it was a critical issue of concern and safeguarding for us when we put that forward. So I think the working group, although you're saying that it's going to be a forward-looking project rather than looking back, I think the fact that the calling was as specific as it was, I would like to see that addressed, and I would like to see that addressed as a balance from political parties that raise it within the calling. So I don't think that's a negative thing to ask for, to be quite honest. Yeah, but it's just not clear, that's all. So I'm just voicing my opinion. So the other thing is as well, I sort of agree with Councillor Carr with regards to preparing the scope for a working group. I'm not sure, is that how we're expecting that to operate all the time? I think Philip will probably tell me about this a little bit more. I would have thought it would have been the working group from different sections that brought ideas into it. Yeah. So is the scope that's written out here fixed, or is it an expandable scope, which I'm sure it will be? I'm sure you're going to tell me it's going to be expandable relative to the questions that members of the working group raised.
There's also some flexibility in the scope. When you start any scrutiny reviews, try and keep it very tight, because ultimately, but as they go, there will always be some expansion when you actually start doing the work, because questions come up, questions answered, and you're not going to sit in the meeting and say, well, no, you can't, we can't talk about that. If you keep it tight, it gives you a room for expansion, because if you start with something that's too big, it then expands into something that becomes unmanageable. So that's why you keep them quite tight. That's why we keep it quite tight at the beginning. But I would say if there are, I think going forwards, if there are then concerns about how it's running, how it is, that is something that can be looked at. That's something that can be looked at independently.
If I can just sure. So in the case of recognising this as primarily due to the calling and the incisiveness of the calling, that the home visits, what I'm conscious of is that you're not seeing as mark your own homework. Yeah, I don't want you to be looked at like that. So I want there to be a balance within the group, and I also want the calling issue of home visits and the safeguarding issues that raised to be paramount within even the future group responses, to be honest.
If I may, Chair, the calling, if I remember, was regarding the re-tendering of the tent for the Healthy Families programme. So that's why this scope of this work is around that. But I understand where you're coming from in terms of the shaping of the service, because shaping of the service obviously does link into the re-tendering in terms of the shaping of the service. That's slightly different, though, to a review of current service provision or previous year's service provision. That one, I think, is still worthy of a scrutiny. Don't get me wrong in terms of current provision, but that would be more relevant to be discussed at adults and adult social care and health scrutiny committee. And I think there are some issues on that agenda already around there in terms of reviewing service provision. Therefore, I'm trying to think that we're talking about a link to it in terms of shaping the service in the future rather than a scrutiny of the current function. Though I take it, though, you have to know the current position in order to help shape it. So I don't want us to go down a bit of a rabbit hole in terms of getting ourselves onto a focus of that without realising that it's about shaping the service going forward. That's what this piece of scoping is about.
Mike, do you want to come back?
Yeah, please. I completely appreciate that, Nigel. Yeah. On point 4, references the calling, and then is highlighted in 2 paragraphs. In fact, in 2.5 paragraphs about the calling. So that's the reason that I'm bringing that forward. If this was not in this, I want to brought it up. Okay, you've brought it up within the report. I accept that. What I'm asking is, if we recognise within the report for the new scoping that you put forward that this is not just not recognised in moving forward because of the seriousness of the issues that came forward in procuring the contracts for future.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
And I get that, Mike. I think you're right. That's why I think it's important, I think, as far as the officers are concerned, when they're providing information to the members, to get that understanding of the current service offer in order to help the debate in terms of shaping it going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say, first of all, I'm pleased that the membership of this new working group will not be a one-party body decision making, and it will be balanced. I appreciate that will happen.
All the working groups so far have been politically balanced, and everyone's been invited. Yeah, it's just taking the invitation up.
Because I'm not on this committee, as you realise. I'm going into it looking in the future. Obviously, I welcome any early intervention schemes which have been going on about for so many years, especially young families. I just wondered though, we will be working with hard to reach families, and I wonder if we discussed what will happen if some families refuse to cooperate, because there are that situations. And just wondered if that could be put into the scope of recognising that's a problem.
That's not part of the scrutiny. If that's identified, then it will get passed to the children's, the cabinet member for children's. So we says
okay. Can I say that at a meeting of the Health Scrutiny Committee in March of this year, the report about the health visitor service talked about issues within the service. It said that these capacity pressures are particularly affecting the districts of Bassetlaw, Ashfield, Gedling and Broxtowe, but with proactive management of sickness and recoupment, this is now easing, particularly in Bassetlaw and Gedling. I just wondered, will this new group be receiving regular reports on issues like capacity, staff sickness and recoupment issues that impact the health families programme?
No.
Yeah, thank you for your question, John. Again, this is about shaping the service going forward and the process. It's not about setting up a group to receive separate information about performance. It is right for that data, though, at some stage to be reviewed, and I'm sure the relevant scrutiny committee, it would appear on agenda and get that sort of data. And I'm sure, as I've said earlier, I think that's already on the radar for adult social care and health scrutiny.
Okay, thank you.
And my final point was that I know that you've got a lot of people involved in looking at this Healthy Families programme. I just wondered if the NHS services, including surgeries, and will that be involved in it? Because many of the families can't get in to see a doctor at this present time.
Yeah, come under health scrutiny, which is a separate entity. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Owen.
Chairman, I think we're getting a bit bogged down at the moment with all of this. It's clear that we are in the early stages of the scrutiny process, and there is a learning curve that we are on. In some cases, people are much further down that learning curve than others, judging from some of the comments this morning. And to that end, that's why we're having a review of scrutiny, and an email has gone out outlining a programme to collect members' views, and there will be interviews with members and with chairman and vice chairman of the individual scrutiny committees, so that we can improve the process and refine it and hone it to what we want as a council. The question was posed earlier, is it right for Cabinet to say that they want something scrutinised? Yes, it is. That's part and parcel of the scrutiny process. If they feel that it would a particular topic would benefit from scrutiny, then it's right and proper for them to say, will you scrutinise this for us, please? And it's also right and proper that they may suggest some lines of inquiry. But it will be for the scrutiny section, the working group, to determine the final scope of any scrutiny, and not for Cabinet to restrict that scope in any way, shape or form. But the important thing is that scrutiny has got to be focused. If you don't have a focus, then you're just going to go round in circles and you're never going to come to an appropriate conclusion. And I wasn't involved in the call-in. I think I was on holiday at the time, so I couldn't be. But my understanding was that it was about the actual recommissioning, and that's what you've got to focus on. Now, I accept that there are other issues that you have concerns about, and that's fair enough. And you've mentioned safeguarding in particular. Well, my advice would be call for a separate scrutiny through whichever committee you want on the safeguarding process. Have it focused on that one particular topic. But to be throwing everything into the melting pot means that you're going to come... I don't know that you'll ever come up with a conclusion, but if you do come up with a conclusion, it's going to be very vague and very generic, and I don't think that is really the purpose of scrutiny. So I think we can move this forward. I think the members of the working group have got it in their power to focus specifically on the topic in hand, and then if you find that there are other things that you would like to explore further, then call for scrutiny of those in the appropriate scrutiny committees.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you, Councillor Kerry.
Well, Councillor Owen's just said virtually everything I was about to say, but I think one of the key things that he mentioned is it's about focus. And what this element of scrutiny working group are going to be looking at is the procurement of a future service. And for me, the important things are in those key lines requiring. The third one down is how is engagement with stakeholders, children, and families being used to shape the service to be delivered. The second one is second item, what flexibility will there be within the contract to have continual transformation? We've had contracts before. I'm not going to mention any. We've got 25-year contracts in certain things. This council has had that is not flexible, and we see problems in other areas, particularly in recycling. I would think where it's made it difficult for us to do. So I think by focusing on this right now in the way we're doing, and not being what's the word? Not distracted, but not focusing on this as a very important key for future delivery of those key services to our residents is very important. And quite rightly, Philip says, if we want to scrutinise something else in more detail, go to the right place and do it. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carey. Okay. Martin.
Yeah, it's just to confirm that the review really is looking about what the service looks like. It's because obviously it's been decided how it will be commissioned, but it's really what the recommissioned service will look like and how it will function, how it will deliver its services on a day-to-day basis. And obviously, it's a long contract. So, like I say, there's a key point to know about flexibility, so that it can move with the times. Because where we are now is not where we will be in. The world's not going to be the same in 5 years' time. So, hopefully that's what will come out to review it. And just to emphasise it, if during that review there's other things that you think, I'm concerned about this, one of the recommendations can go on other work programs that something is looked at specifically on its own. So we can do other things. You often get from Scrutiny, you often get reviews being born out of other reviews.
Eric,
come back in, Chairman. So, sorry, the other point I was making that there is obviously a lot of passionate views about the service and the provision, and it would be if those passionate members volunteered for the working group and put their input into that process.
Thank you. Yeah, good point. Well made. Okay, we'll now move to the vote on the recommendation.
Got one recommendation.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just going to amend the recommendation. So it's the recommendation 2. So after the end of the wording, I put that, and that the overall membership of the group contains representation from all political groups.
Okay. So the recommendations with that amendment are set out on page 8. And take a vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item 5, which is the Scrutiny annual report. This is to provide a summary of the work of the overview committee and the 3 select committees during the past year, 22-23, and to detail how the Council Scrutiny function has worked to support delivery of the objectives contained in the Nottinghamshire plan, the 10-year plan. Okay, I'll move the recommendations as detailed in the report and ask for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Moxon. Does anyone have any questions on the annual report? Councillor Fold. Microphone.
Thank you. I mean, it's an interesting report and, of course, covers a lot of ground. It just shows you the work we have done. The concern we have is that we're being asked to endorse the report. Now, if that suggests that we've been absolutely happy by the way scrutiny has been carried on in this council, we can't do that because, well, we know the issues we've raised. If that was changed to noted, that would be fine. But just to take just one example, if you want an example, just take the cost of living review for one. I mean, it took an awful long time, and it seems to have been a little impact. But you've got it in your final report will be presented at the future meeting of the overview committee. It's vague. It took a long time. It wasn't urgent enough, and it hasn't had the kind of impact we were hoping for. That's just one example. I could kind of raise some more. So, and I know it's early, and I know we're learning, and all the rest of it. But we if you're saying by endorse, we agree and we're happy with everything that's happened at this committee, we can't do that.
Okay, thank you.
Despite your chairmanship.
Unfortunately, it can't be noted. It needs to be endorsed, so it goes to full council. So it needs to be voted on. It needs to be. It has to be. We need to have it endorsed for full council, so it goes to council. No. No. So, do you have any other questions on the report? Oh, Councillor Carr.
It's not a question really. It's really a statement of where I think scrutiny is in this council. The whole scrutiny process for me has been underwhelming. and it's not because I'm at the bottom of a learning curve. The reason why I think like that. I've raised before at other meetings the involvement of cabinet members in scrutiny, and today is an exception. There is usually somebody from cabinet at scrutiny meetings, whether they're invited or not. The role of scrutiny is to be completely devolved from the executive, i.e. the cabinet. And by all means, if the scrutiny committees and this committee invite somebody from cabinet to come and talk to them about an issue, that's fine. But for them to be there per se, as like a member of the committee, to me, is unacceptable. When we had the unedifying sight in a meeting of this committee a few times ago, where we raised the issue of travelling expenses for members, of a cabinet member rising to his feet, going over to a member of his party, and then telling him what to say, and then they said it. That is not the role of a cabinet member at a scrutiny committee, and that should not be allowed moving forward. I have actually spoken to a couple too, and I said this to Councillor Barnfather at a meeting, and he wanted the names of these two Conservatives who had told me they're not happy with the scrutiny process. And I've told him, well, if they've come to me and not to you, there's a good reason why they don't want their names told to you. And they're feeling that it's not effective. It isn't effective. Some of the select committees, we turn up, we're given a presentation, and that's it. There's no, what do you want us to talk about? And that's what it should be doing. From an opposition party, the whole thing's a bit of a charade, to be honest with you. Recommendations are made that don't reflect debate, which was the case of the only successful call-in that we've had. Committee chairs are inconsistent. You're not. Committee chairs are inconsistent in the way they chair debates. Some allow a debate, others limit members to speak only once. Well, that can't be right. It's got to be consistent across all of the scrutiny and overview committees. The call-in procedure is too rigid, and we actually, as a group, tried to call in the decision at the Topwig Hay Farm. And one of the reasons it was turned down was because it was stated that the cabinet member for asset management had all the financial information when making the decision. Well, good. I'm glad he did. But we should be able to see that information as well. What's the scrutiny process done? Well, in my opinion, it's strengthened the position of cabinet members and disenfranchised everyone else. In my view, this is not how scrutiny works. Indeed, Mr. Chairman, the only thing that this council has achieved in the last year is unconstitutionally restricting the ability of councillors to ask questions and put motions to motion that impact local people to full council. I have to say, and it's with no great relish, that the whole overview process smacks of an executive who want to rule with as little scrutiny and interference as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Martin's just going to come in.
Councillor Fold, just a point of cost of living. I would know that I found it a frustrating review to deal with, but obviously we had the meeting with CAB back in July. I'm currently just working to get a second meeting with a couple of other external providers to get that extra contextual information, and then we'll be able to go on to the final point. And I do understand it has taken longer than I would have liked, but there's been other ones too as well, and it was always going to be a challenging one too. But please be assured that I am focused on it, and we will be getting it moving again soon.
And the meetings we've had so far on the cost of living have been really quite effective, haven't they? Councillor Pringle's been with me. Can we bring Councillor Owen in? Thank you.
Chairman, I've got to respond to those comments that were made by Councillor Carr, particularly regarding the travelling expenses issue. No member of my group tells me what to say. They often wish there were things that I said that I did that I said that I shouldn't have, but they never tell me what to say the business of travelling expenses is a matter for the Governance and Ethics Committee. And for those who didn't tune in yesterday to another stellar performance by that committee, and I'm glad to see Mr. Stevenson here this morning, but he couldn't turn up yesterday to Governance and Ethics, but still we'll let him off on this occasion. We had a report presented on travelling expenses, as I promised we would have. And we had a pre-prepared speech read out by a member of the Ashfield Independents or Independent Group or whatever they are, and that was read out. And he concluded by saying it was a wasted opportunity. So I gave him the opportunity to say what he wanted. And he said, well, there's nothing else to say. And we then had a vote, and
is this a point of order or clarification? Because I hadn't heard that. Is it just an instruction?
This is not right. Okay. Councillor, are you finished now?
And I was going on to say that the report and the recommendations were presented to the Governance and Ethics Committee, and if memory serves me correctly, and it often doesn't these days, but if memory serves me correctly, the report was unanimous. The recommendations on that report were unanimously supported.
Thank you. Okay.
But as far as scrutiny generally is concerned, there's been some very disparaging comments. When we set up scrutiny, if, as you know, Chairman, vice chairmanships of this committee and the other scrutiny committees were given to members of the opposition. That was a clear indication of how well we wanted scrutiny to work and how much input we wanted from opposition groups. If opposition members feel that they are not getting things discussed that they want to get discussed, then they need to talk to their own members, who are the vice chairman of the scrutiny committees, deliberately so. So it's not a failing of the system, perhaps, but it's a failing of them using the system in an appropriate way.
Thank you. Councillor Purdue. Thank you.
Say also, why is the chairman of Governance and Ethics on an overview committee?
It's nothing to do with scrutiny.
Well, I'll ask the question again. Why is the chairman of the Governance and Ethics Committee on an overview committee?
There's nothing in the council's
again,
constitution.
it just shows how worthless overview and scrutiny is. How can that work? I'm chair of Governance Audit Standards of Broxtowe. I'm precluded from being on any overview committee.
Maybe the Broxtowe Constitution needs to be reviewed. Councillor Purdue, thank you.
And we did it properly and constitutionally.
Thank you. Councillor Purdue,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's fair to say, like others, I've found the scrutiny process largely frustrating. Some of my colleagues believe it's poorly thought out, short on delivery, and if you look at the appendix, there is a perception that the only thing any cabinet member has listened to is increasing the total budget for replacing school clothing and footwear for families in exceptional circumstances to £1,000, from £500 to £1,000 for the whole of the county of Nottinghamshire for the whole year. It's felt that we've made no progress on concessionary bus passes for veterans, and scrutiny, some of us believe, is to ultimately benefit the residents of Nottinghamshire. Many feel there's been no progress on increasing free school meals to claimants by introducing an opt-out policy, and nothing on the cost of living yet. The list goes on. the reality is that the whole scrutiny process is felt by many to be one of frustration, not least the lack of progress over strategic recycling centre review, where we were promised an outcome last year and we're still waiting. That's why I welcome the involvement of the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. There's a perception that everything to do with governance is simply rushed through on this council, as it has sought to reinvent itself and move away from the mistakes of the past. I do, whilst I get when it's said that scrutiny is a sort of learning process that we're going through at the moment, I do feel, Mr. Chairman, that we have wasted 2 years, or an element of waste in 2 years, halfway through this council cycle, for a process that actually the vast majority of county councillors are involved with at borough and district level. Scrutiny should be working for us, and I'm not so sure the executive is absolutely on board with assisting the council to scrutinise effectively. So I won't be supporting this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just pick a few things up. The recycling centre review, the scope's going to committee next month with the review happening immediately. A lot of what you've just made basically a full council speech, so I look forward to hearing it again at the end of September. But anyway, thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, I think we all agree that the scrutiny setup isn't perfect. It's only been in effect a year. Councillor Purdue-Horan, I know you had other things on in the first year, so you probably missed that. But this system's only been in place a year. We're all learning, and we're moving forward better. I've always made the case in the Children's Committee that we'll never be asked to scrutinise things that cabinet members want us to. Contrary, I've never disagreed with you, Councillor Aaron, but on this occasion I will. And we're not there. We're not there for rubber stamping things either. We're there to scrutinise things that councillors feel important on the back of what's been raised by their residents. And I think Children and Families Scrutiny Committee have had a busy year. We held and made real impact, particularly around secondary school places. We held a review on that. That's referenced in this paper, but also on EHCP plans and putting forward tangible and impactful recommendations to Cabinet, which will go forward later this year to improve that process. And I find it absolutely hilarious. In fact, it's not even funny. It's dishonest and disgraceful, actually, that the two members in this committee that have raised concerns about the impact of scrutiny represent groups that have the lowest attendance turning up to working groups. Whilst my committee were reviewing EHCPs and the SEND process and putting forward recommendations that, as I say, will have a tangible impact on the families out there that we represent, where were the Ashfield Independents? I'll tell you where they were. They were on the front page of the Chad asking the cabinet member to resign. You didn't even turn up to the working group. So they talk, whilst we're all sat in working groups taking action. The only thing that this report is missing is attendance. We should put in attendance by group, and let's see who the talkers and the walkers are, because I know absolutely who it is on our side, and we are making a difference, and we've got to move forward and continue doing so. But turn up rather than spouting any words.
I have a point of order. Would Councillor Smith like to reconsider the use of the word dishonest?
No.
Right. Okay.
Before I bring Councillor Jackson in, before I bring Councillor Jackson in, I will say there seems to be a lot of criticism of the scrutiny coming from, in particular, the independents. And as the chair and my vice chair, who's not here today, we've had this discussion many times when we're sat on a review for a couple of hours, and we have many meetings. We've done the work, we've done the council buildings, we do the cost of living, and we haven't had any attendance despite invitations to your group. We've not had one independent attend. Okay, so but we do get everything that we've done in the review rehashed in these meetings, and that is not the place to do it. Take part in the review, and then you know what we're doing. Okay, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I suppose Councillor Owen and Owen and Councillor Smith have probably said what I was going to say. But to me, scrutiny is down to, or the effectiveness of scrutiny is down to the opposition to be effective in scrutinising what the controlling group does. And I think they have every opportunity to do that, and the standard mode, but not actually bringing in, scrutiny things. I think Kate's brought a few up today, and I think we need to, it's up to the opposition. They want to scrutinise the executive. They need to bring the things to the scrutiny committees. We've got good chairman here. We listen. We've got opposition members on there. Bring the thing long they're relevant to what is happening in the council and relevant to the residents of Nottinghamshire. It's up to them to bring the things forward. That's what scrutiny is all about. Look at what your cabinet's doing and ask questions about it.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Yep. Councillor Kerry.
Yeah, I think this is, again, I'm just wondering whether some of the members need more scrutiny training. This is about focusing on issues and whatever. Part of the process of scrutiny is an annual report. This item today is about approving an annual report that will go to full council. And the comments made about whether you like scrutiny or not, whether it's done effectively or not, you all have chances to contribute to that. And actually, on page 20 of 90, in the chairman's forward, it says the third paragraph there, now that the new arrangements have been in place a year, review the scrutiny element of council's government will consider how the council process can be further developed. It's all there. It's right on the first page of the report. So to say all the things that have been said, don't say it in here. Get involved in the process and make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerry. Okay. Councillor Moxon. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't going to say anything, but I did want to quickly pick up a couple of things that were said very early on, particularly about cabinet members appearing at select committees. I was always under the impression that we were here to scrutinise the executive and the cabinet, and so I don't know how you can do that without them being present at a scrutiny committee. We're not here to exclusively scrutinise officers and exclude cabinet members. We're here to for us as backbenchers, as non-cabinet members, and for the opposition to scrutinise those cabinet members in their different departments. So I don't quite understand that one, and I've certainly heard that before, and I really don't understand that argument as to why they should be excluded. The other thing I wanted to just quickly pick up was about different chairmen of different committees operating differently, and that's always going to be the case, isn't it? No matter what committee you're on, you're going to have a chairman that operates in a certain way. My style's always been to sort of allow everyone to have questions, but one thing I don't like is people asking a number of questions all at the same time. So I am quite open in my committee and making sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask a question, but please just ask one question at a time, because there's always a danger that that an officer or a cabinet member or whoever's answering is going to miss one of the questions that you've asked. So just ask one at a time. But different chairmen do it in different ways, and there's no 100% right way to do it. That's just my style. Everyone's got a different way of doing it. Should there be uniformity? Well, I'd hate for us all to be exactly the same, because if everyone does the same, you'll get the same answer, won't you? So I'm all for people not being mavericks necessarily, but doing things of their own accord and chairing it in the best way that they feel possible at the time.
Thank you, Councillor Mox. Good point. Yeah, I hope I give everyone their chance to speak. I know upset some people, but that's what we're here to do, isn't it? Got Councillor Wilmot. You've just signalled now.
Just a quick one. It's a hell of a plan, really, with all the 9 different ambitions and commitments and so forth. And I just wondered, how will you determine how the ambitions and commitments of this plan have worked? What statistics will be brought, forward to say that everything's worked to satisfaction? I mean, yes, you've got groups that will be scrutinising, but they must have some sort of information to know whether it's worked or not. I just wondered if you'd thought about that.
Okay, Martin.
Well, we've got council twice.
Yeah, well, you can answer that.
Yeah, as you'll see from the next item, because there is right at the end of the report, there is like a broad look about looking at next year. But if you were to look ahead at the work programme, we have got the council plan scheduled to come up. I believe it's January, and it's going to be coming once again. It's the date yet to be decided because we're just working out how it will fit in with reporting and when we can bring a report that's going to have like the most up to date data for you. So the council plan will be coming twice to overview in this coming year for members to look at how the council is working towards meeting those ambitions.
Okay, thank you. I think that's been a good debate on that. Councillor Carr, sorry.
Thank you. Just an indication as why we haven't got a lot of confidence in the present scrutiny system. Now, I'll read this out to you. This was a resolution of full council on the 31st of March 2022 that the members' working group, this is to do with constitutional change, report to the Governance and Ethics Committee as appropriate, be authorised to maintain an overview of the operation of the new arrangements during the first executive arrangement, and to make any suggested proposals for change to the Governance and Ethics Committee for recommendation to full council. It never went through the Governance and Ethics Committee. It went straight from the working party to full council. That's why the Independent Alliance don't have a great deal of confidence in scrutiny in this council.
Thank you for that statement, Councillor Carr. Okay, let's move to the recommendation. There's one set out on page 16, and it's the scrutiny annual report for last year, be endorsed and referred to full council for consideration. All those in favour, show of hands. All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Okay. Okay, we now move to the last item, agenda item 6, which is the work programme. Martin,
yeah,
to introduce that.
So here, we've got the new work programmes for overview committee. So we're looking for your approval of that, plus the approval of the work programmes for the 3 select committees. There's been an awful lot of work going over during the summer with the chairs, the link officers, Nigel in particular, to get the work programme sorted out. So we looked at the previous work programmes, looked at corporate priorities, big issues that were coming up, and we've tried to include that as much as we can, but obviously not overburdening the work programme so that you are able to look at things in depth and make some impact. Just to reassert that the work programmes you're approving them today, but they are fluid documents. It's not set in stone. Things can be added, things can be taken away, things can be amended. So obviously we'll carry on looking at the work programme for every meeting of this committee going forwards.
Okay, before we move to any questions, I'm going to move the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Moxon, thank you. Questions, Councillor Fogg. Okay. Yeah, microphone's on. Hey.
Getting older.
Again,
so, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the work programme looks very thin to us. Now, I know criticism has been made about us perhaps not making as much of a contribution towards scrutiny as we can. Just to tell you, we absolutely do. We gave you a list if you remember at the last committee. It came back to us with a request to fill in quite a lengthy and complicated form, which we did. We got it back to you. There's still quite a lot of the things that we've asked for to go to overview and scrutiny have not made it through. Some have, but some have not. And it just feels that, I mean, just to give you one example, one of them was Top Wickhey. Now, I know that decision has been made, but the decision to move to Top Wickhey, which, if you remember, we didn't support for various reasons, That's a huge project involving a lot of money, a lot of disruption. A whole range of different issues could be could be raised as a result of this. We need to scrutinise that here, not the decision that's been made to move to it. We understand that that's been made and we've kind of lost that battle, but we need to scrutinise how the move is being made, what the costs really are. So I think it's I mean there's no point saying well get involved in scrutiny and then saying you can't have that on scrutiny work programme on a regular basis, and it just feels that. And to be honest, we're feeling quite similar. I know it's not a related thing, but in terms of the constitution, we feel as if our voice is not being heard in a way that we hoped it would, and it feels like there's an awful lot of work going on actually to prevent us from actually getting stuff on the agenda that we really want to scrutinise.
Nigel.
If I may, thank you very much, Councillor Fogg, for the question. We did have a discussion yesterday, I know, and I was grateful for having that conversation. The Top Wickay decision you took at full council, so there was the full debate. That I think that it doesn't mean that the chance for scrutiny for Top Wickay just goes away. The issue is about the timing in terms of what additional information is requested. If you had to say today, if we had a discussion around Top Wickay, the danger is all you're going to do is have the same discussion that you had at full council, which was about making the decision. So it wasn't a case of it can't come, it was about the timing of it and the additional information. And there are future decision points around consultation, and whether the issue that you're talking about is about what consultation is going to happen carrying on future, which is around members potentially moving in terms of what the building is going to look like, as the detail, how it's going to work for members, which isn't necessarily a point for scrutiny, but a point for consultation, which is different to scrutiny. So I'm just saying about it. I'm talking about timing of that in terms of what it is you're going to scrutinise. Because at the moment, if you're going to scrutinise Top Wickay, it'll be about the decision you've already taken. Yep. So I'm just saying that there will be other decision points around Top Wickay and around County Hall that you may want to come back to in terms of the scrutiny. And I take Martin's point that it is quite a considerable position in terms of the amount of work that's already on items. So it will be a discussion also about getting into the detail of what you want to scrutinise, but something else you probably will just be as important. You probably would have to come off the list because it is the sheer number of things that you want to scrutinise.
Capacity.
Yeah. So I'll take Martin's point in terms of it's a living document. You should take this paper as a living document. This is today's view of what scrutiny looks like around the panels. It will be another iteration in terms of, but that will be based on what's the next decision that's going to happen around Top Wickay or County Hall. If that helps in terms of trying to shape the answer to what is it you are going to scrutinise around Top Wickay.
Yeah, and just and you'll see, I think it's on overview on the items to be scheduled. We have got a progress report on the outcomes of the task and finish review on buildings, so a lot of that will probably be covered in that as well. So that again, it's just when it comes. That's why it's just on the pending rather than being placed on a specific committee date.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Any other members? Okay, take a vote on the show. Show of hands, all in favour. Yeah. Any against? No. Okay, unanimous. And thank you. Now close the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance and go and enjoy the weather.